So y'all have been loving this sweatshirt tutorial where I showed you how to make the trendy side bow applique. We are going to finish that sweatshirt today by putting this design right here on the front, and we're going to applique it with some fabric. It's going to look so beautiful. I can't wait to show you. So we're going to go step by step through the process of how to applique. If this is your first time trying applique, or if you just need some tips and tricks, you are in the right spot. So let's go ahead. I'll show you everything we are going to use today, and then we'll go step by step through it on the machine. Let's talk about the supplies we're using. Of course, we have our sweatshirt. This is the Gildan 18,000. This is the forest green that we did this beautiful applique on. This is my go-to stabilizer. It's a no-show mesh. This is a cutaway, but it's not as bulky. See how flimsy it is? I love using this for sweatshirts. We're also going to use, this is the cheaper tearaway. We're going to use this to stabilize our hooping just a little more because you don't want a lot of bouncing with applique. That can make the stitches get off. So we're going to make sure it's really tight and has lots to grip to. We have our Target stickers. These help me find placement. I'll be using the 8x13 Mighty Hoop. You can use whatever hoop or frame that your design will fit in. I think the design I'm using is the 6x10 design, so it's a little bigger than 9 inches across and 6 inches tall. So it's a big, merry design. Speaking of design, this is the design I chose today. I love this digitizer. I'll link it below. I have gotten so many designs from her, and it's always a great stitch out. So I have my fabric. This was, again, from our last video. This is a plaid tartan. I love this Christmas plaid from Hobby Lobby. So we have our fabric. We prepped it with something called Heat and Bond Light. Look at that shine. You see the plastic film? This will help us adhere our fabric to our sweatshirt, as well as help with fraying, help with our cutting and trimming. This is like magic when you're doing applique. So I will insert a video on that as we're going along the process. So I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. We have our wonderful, my tried and true applique scissors. See how they're curved? This helps cutting so much easier. This kind of goes over the hoop. I'm telling you, these are my go-to. And then if you have a multi-needle machine, I use the Magnet Glide bobbins. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? We will be probably using our little Cricut mini press to adhere the Heat and Bond Light to our sweatshirt. We will use my heat press. This is a 15x15 heat press. I don't have an iron, but you totally could use a household iron. Just make sure there's no steam. Steam and Heat and Bond Light don't go together. Then I'm going to use my Mighty Hoop hooping station. Not necessary, but I cannot do sweatshirts without it now. So this is the hooping station to help you get perfect placement every time. So today we're going to be using the Melco EMT16X 16 needle embroidery machine. I didn't use her in the last video because I thought I was using a fast frame, but today I know I'm using a Mighty Hoop, so it's gonna go on her today. If you're interested in a Melco, you can click the link in the description. Ron is so amazing and he'll be glad to help you out. Okay, let's go ahead, get our sweatshirt hooped, and get to stitching. Okay, so I have this, we use this in our business. This is a t-shirt ruler, and it's got a little mark. Okay, so usually I would have the center marked, but it's been a week since I did it, so yeah, that's pretty good. So we have our center line, and now I'm just gonna take this t-shirt ruler. Not necessary, you could totally use your fingers, but I am just gonna add a sticker where I want the top. I feel like I'm gonna go, since it's such a big design, probably like 3 to 3.5 fingers down, or kind of right here at this big star. So I'm just gonna, perfect. So that's where I want the top of my design to hit, right at that crosshair. It's gonna go down to 6, so I'll go ahead. Sometimes I overmark just to make sure that I get it correctly on the hoop. That's where that one's going. And then I'll go ahead and move this down to the 3-ish. Okay, so this is where the design will be. You could also print out your design and place it to make sure you have the perfect placement, but we're gonna go with these stickers. So let's go ahead and get on the Mighty Hoop and get it on the machine to embroider. So we have our hooping station. Again, everything I use today will be linked in the description box below. And I have my no-show mesh. I like to make it bigger than the hoop, so there's room for it to grab. And then Do the same with this one. This is our tearaway. Okay, so if you've never used a mighty hoop, watch your fingers. Okay. Place our stabilizer. I do the tearaway first. We'll do it this way. And then this one. Then we will take our sweatshirt. So I want this to be the top of the design, so I do need to have room. Woo-hoo-hoo. That's going to be the bottom. So you can see I got about a finger and a half. So I got to make sure when I hoop it that I hoop it correctly. Not only going up and down with a straight line, but also giving some breathing room to make sure that it can stitch. Okay, so you can see I've got some space for the hoop. And you don't want to pull too much, but I do tighten just a smidge to make sure there's not a lot of slack. You want to make sure there's no movement in your hoop, whether you're doing a regular hoop or mighty hoop. All of my arrows still look in line. Nothing is distorted. So there we go. So this will be the top of our design. This is the bottom. And so we're going to do it right here. Okay, you can see I have set my machine to a mighty hoop. Now I'm going to hoop the sweatshirt onto the machine. You can see I do have this extra thing down here. This is for a hat hoop. We do so many hats. So we do take off the hat hoop and then we just leave this attachment on. So if you're wondering what that is. Being careful not to sew the back of the sweatshirt to the front. And then you just click in, hear that click, and we're ready to trace and stitch out. So I am going to trace this design, which means there's a laser on here. It's a little red light, and so it traces around to see where you are in your hoop, if you're hooped right, and where your design is going to go. So I think I'm going to move it down just a smidge. Okay, so now that I've traced, we can go ahead and get to stitching. Okay, so I'm going to take off my stickers. Now that I have traced it and I feel confident about where it's going. You can reuse these, so I always keep them for another time. And make sure you can hear it almost like a drum. It should be tight but not too tight, but I don't need a lot of movement with my sweatshirt, so that's how you know you have the perfect hooping, is you can kind of hear it like a little drum. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the first. It'll do a placement stitch, and then we're going to place our fabric, do a tack down stitch, and then we will cut, and then we'll do the final applique satin stitch. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is where we'll add the fabric. So I have already stitched that placement stitch. Some software or some machines let you put what's called a hold or applique steps in. If you don't have a machine like that, you can just press stop after it finishes that first, kind of like a bean stitch all the way around. It's like an outline stitch. That tells you where to put the fabric. So now is when we're going to take our fabric prepped with our Heat and Bond light. So let's put a quick video how to apply your Heat and Bond light. Super easy. Again, it helps glue your fabric to your sweatshirt at the end. It helps with fraying and cutting. So to use the Heat and Bond light for our applique fabric, we are going to cut a section of Heat and Bond Light that will make sure to cover our applique design. Then we are going to cut our applique fabric just a smidge bigger than the piece of Heat and Bond Light. But you do not want some of the sticky Heat and Bond Light to get on your heat press or iron. We are also going to pre-press our fabric to make sure to get any wrinkles out before we put the Heat and Bond Light on. Again, I'm trimming the Heat and Bond Light to make sure we don't get any glue on our heat press or iron. You just heat according to the instructions, and you will know it's done when you can peel it and it looks silky, smooth, and shiny plastic, perfect for embroidery and applique. So let's go ahead and place our fabric. Make sure you cut a piece big enough to cover the whole applique. If you're doing different types of fabric, obviously you want to take that into consideration when you're adding stops. And like in my last video, make sure when we are kind of helping the fabric stay in place, you do not use your fingers. Use a chopstick, a tool, something other than your finger. This is just a stylus I have from my other machine. So let's go ahead and place our fabric where we want it. I'm making sure if you have a pattern that you like the placement of the pattern. All right, now we're ready for our tack down stitch. Don't want your fingers anywhere near that. So now it is done with that tack down stitch. It tacked down all of that fabric. So we are going to gently and carefully remove our hoop from our machine, and we are going to carefully cut around that tack down stitch. So that way you can do a beautiful satin stitch that covers all of that mess. Also, right now I'm going to plug in my Cricut mini press. So we're carefully taking it off. Okay, let's go over and cut. So we're letting our Cricut mini heat up, and we're gonna go through and carefully cut away our fabric. I'll start it and then I'm gonna zoom you in so you can see exactly what we're doing. But we have our applique scissors and we are gently going to cut. I'm kind of holding my elbow up, and we're gonna get as close to those stitches as we can. We don't wanna cut the stitch though, because then that'll let that fabric go free. The reason I like these scissors is I don't have to worry about cutting my sweatshirt because it's curved. So I'm just going along and cutting as close as I can. Okay, I'll zoom you in and try to get you a closer shot. So that took 10 minutes of cutting, and you see it's still kind of shaggy, and I have the middle of the R's to take care of. If you saw my last video, you know my trick, but if not, we are going to use a seam ripper and ever so slightly pick at the center of the R. You see how I'm getting like a fiber right here, and poking a little hole, not in the sweatshirt, in the fabric, so I can get my scissors in there to cut that hole out. Okay, so I've made it. Make sure you don't cut the sweatshirt. That's why we're using the seam ripper. Again, I'm just poking and ever so slightly trying to grab a fiber that's not the sweatshirt, because you don't want to rip your sweatshirt. Okay, now that I made a little hole, I'm gonna make sure I'm not in the sweatshirt and then kind of make a little tear. So I've made 2 little tears to be able to get my scissors in there. I'm also gonna take my lint roller to this. We cut it as close as we could. I'm actually just gonna kind of clean it up. You can see, just be gentle. Grab your lint roller, look at all those little pieces. We're gonna get that middle out, touch up any spots, and then we'll use our Cricut Mini. So I'm just, now that I have that little hole, I'm just gonna do like little snippets, making sure not to cut the sweatshirt, just the fabric. See how I created that little snip? And I'm just gonna go around and trim the center of the R out without cutting the sweatshirt. Getting as close as I can to those stitches, but again, I think this digitizer has really thick applique stitches. So same thing, I'm just kind of putting some notches so I can get in there as close as I can without pulling. You don't want to disturb where the placement is, because then your applique will get all off track. So there is what it looks like. So when you feel confident that you got as much off as you can take your Cricut Mini press and ever so gently, don't disturb the hooping, but kind of run your Mini over it to kind of adhere that fabric with the heat and bond light to the sweatshirt to kind of prevent some bubbling. You wouldn't take it off the hoop because then you'd never really be able to get it back in the same spot. Let's go ahead and get it back on the machine for that final satin stitch. This is going to be the longest part of our stitch out, and it's going to look so good. The rest of it is a pretty long satin stitch, so I will do some time lapses in between and I'll show you the final product. Okay, so it just finished. Depending on the digitizer, and you'll get to know as you buy more designs from certain shops, you'll get to know your favorites and how they like to do their satin stitches. This one had some extra stitches before that satin stitch to really like keep that fabric in place. I love it when they do that. So it is complete. Look how clean that is. It looks so good. Again, this design, I'll link it below. I love her. I have so many of her designs. We're gonna take it off the hoop. This is where you would press, if you haven't already pressed, your heat and bond light to your shirt, just to keep it from bubbling in the wash process. So let's go ahead and take it off the hoop. So good. All right, let's go ahead and take the Cricut Mini to it. You could use your home iron at this point or your heat press. And I'm just going to make sure all of this fabric is adhered to the sweatshirt. So while I wait for my iron to heat up, I'm just going to take the stabilizer off the back. Again, it's stitched so well, I think because I just had that extra layer. So you figure out whether you're doing sweatshirts, t-shirts, figure out your perfect combo of stabilizer that you like with your hoops. And so I'm just gently holding the stitches for this to tear away. And gently just ripping it off. I'm going in to get all that. And if it was for a client or if I was selling this, I would probably go back in and get all of this tearaway off, but it's for me, so I know it'll come off in the wash. Not worried about it. Now we'll cut around the no-show cutaway and making sure not to cut the stitches. I like to get pretty close, but not too close. You can always take more off if you need to get a little closer. So there's what I'm gonna leave it as. Grab my little mini ironing board. This is from Walmart. I'm not sure if they still have it. I've had it for so long. Okay, so here is the final product. Let's try it on to see how it looks with the bows. I'm so excited. Okay, what do you think? Look how gorgeous this is. Again, this is the 6x10 design, so it ended up being about 6 inches tall by like 9.5 wide. I think this is the perfect complement to the trendy side bow. You can match the applique fabric. If you have not tried the bow, I will link to that video so you can applique the bows on the sides of your sweatshirts. That's a step-by-step tutorial as well. So everything I used today will be linked in the description box below, including the design, the machines I used, all the stabilizers, all the good stuff. Make sure if you haven't watched how to make these side bows, you can click on this video to watch it next. And until next time, thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.